This sermon today is actually going to be a teaching on one of very many things that are wrong with our Western diet. And you may say, well, what does that have to be preached about in church? Well, this could be the last in this series. I do have a summary that I think would be good at some time, but I've been doing the series called I Pray That You Be in Health. I have been discussing with you that I hope and challenging you to look for a life that is optimal health-wise for your spirit, soul, and body. And I think we've covered the soul well, we've covered the spirit well, and I've made some mention to the body as far as exercise and stuff, but I've not really hit nutrition, and I don't see how this would be a complete sermon unless I had just one educative, if that's a word, educational sermon on processed foods. Now, I'm not, to preach or teach on processed foods would take weeks, but I'm picking one thing out that, and I'm telling you, as the more I've been made aware of what I've been putting in my body, the more I have determined to be careful what I put in my body, both quality and quantity wise. If I didn't think that the material that I'm giving you here today could not make a significant improvement in your life if you chose to look for yourself and research yourself and then determine what you want to do, because there's no blank program for everybody. So I'm going to start this off with a prayer, and then I'm going to review just the sermon topics that I've done, and then we're going to take a look at one fraction of processed foods. If you notice from the very first sermon, I brought this nutrition and physical degeneration, which was written, I think, in 1918 by a dentist that made the connection between poor teeth and poor health. And the poor teeth were directly related to poor diet, which is the Western diet, and that was 100 years ago. So let me tell you something. Processed foods have come a long way for one reason: because there's money in it. Okay, Father, thank you for this time together. We give it to you, Lord. We pray that as we're speaking about today, that you just enlighten our minds, Father, and take serious about our health, our diets, our nutrition, all these things. We just thank you, Lord, that you created it all, and what you created is perfect. But what man has done with it has been corrupt. We bless this time now in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. The difference between normal and optimal. Don't settle for what the world calls normal, to keep getting older and older and sicker and more feeble and forgetful and boring and uninspired until we expire. Normal is only statistics. Remember that Moses was having kids when he was way old. Don't be currently fulfilled by what your fulfilling moments were in the past. You have a fulfilling future in front of you right now. Think about what an optimal life would be like for you in the present, no matter what your condition, limitations, or hindrances are. Be committed to have your life be the very best it can be right now. Reach for good health to keep you from needing healing. Set out on a path that has goals, strategy, and plans. Ask for wisdom and understanding in how you should live, how you should exercise and feed your spirit, soul, and body, how you can sleep better and play more and enjoy the journey. Don't let the medical profession profile you out of enjoying a healthy and fulfilling life, abundant life. Dare to explore and experiment, to research and wonder. Instead of asking why, ask why not. Understand this, Psalms 139:14, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. Through nutrition and exercise, spiritually and naturally, we can assist the body in doing its job well. Health is better than healing. It's time to wake up and let life be an exciting journey to the end. Young or old, we should all finish strong. You are being encouraged to begin a lifestyle that pursues the optimal, not the normal, and that embraces the long haul, not the short term, for however long we have. The goal is not quantity of years, but quality of years. The human body is created to be healthy. It has an amazing immune system that operates from the gut to the marrow and the bones. Feeding the immune system, spiritually and naturally, what it needs to be successful is an awesome strategy for accomplishing the goal of being healthy. Weight resistance training strengthens bones. Exercise releases endorphins to make us feel better. We don't need to think about retiring. We need to think about refiring. May God bless us as we consider these concepts. So in the first sermon, I spent time going over this normal and optimal. The second sermon was about exercising yourselves unto godliness, and specifically about resistance training. The Bible uses this word exercise in really cool ways. It talks about those who qualify for the meat of the word instead of the milk of the word, or those who have exercised their senses to discern good and evil. So see, exercise isn't just physical. But on the resistance training, I explained how lifting weights, whether it's a heavy weight a few times or a light weight many times, when your muscle gets sore and when you begin to fatigue, that's when you're beginning to strengthen the muscle, although at that point the muscle's not being strengthened, it's actually being torn down. The fibers are being torn down. But when the fibers regrow, they grow back stronger. And so we read from the book of James when it says, "Count it all joy when you fall into different temptations and trials, knowing this, that these are all trials of your faith, and they're meant to produce something in you." And we looked at what was produced and we'd say, man, that's awesome to have those things. But for our faith to grow, we have to go through resistance. Because when we meet resistance in life, though it may wear us down at the time, if we endure to the end, when we come through it, we will be stronger. Then we had some fun, and right before the Super Bowl, looking at competing for the crown and becoming spiritual athletes. And Paul used athletic languages to get points across. We looked at where Paul was in his missionary journeys, where he was raised, and he was surrounded by athletic events going on. The Olympics was only every 4 years in Olympia, but there were other towns that he actually wintered in his missionary journeys that had those athletic events every 2 years, and then you had athletic events for people competing to be in those events all the time. And it was boxing, it was wrestling, and it was running. And I gave a lot of those scriptures that do that. And Paul told us that we're competing. We're competing, and if you don't know you're competing, then you're in a bunch of trouble. You know, there's rules that you abide by competing, and Paul laid those things out. And then we looked at fasting being good for our health, and we spoke about intermittent fasting and what goes on in the body when you fast. Is a thing called autophagy. And I still have still a few copies left of the Nobel Prize thing that was given in 2016 to a Japanese doctor who came up with this term. And what autophagy is when you fast, your body goes in and starts cleaning up all the stuff that needs cleaned up with cells, whether they're dead cells, sick cells, whether it's excess fat, whatever it is. The body goes into cleanup mode. And this only happens when fasting. So if you eat first thing in the morning, eat 3 meals, and snack during the day, and then snack at night, your body has no time to do autophagy. It's just trying to digest everything and doesn't do a very good job at it. So we found that 3 meals a day is really, it's a myth that you have to have 3 meals a day. Societies for thousands of years did not eat 3 meals a day. And so thinking that you have to be feeding your face all the time, that I think it's just a good excuse for our desires, and it's amazing what can happen with fasting. And then we last preached that on the scripture where the Lord is my shepherd, and it says he restores my soul. And we talked about restoring your soul or inner healing or dealing with traumas from the past can have a major effect on your health. Not that it does for everybody, but it certainly has that potential. And we saw the need to have a healthy soul. And that's what John was writing about when he said, I pray that you be in health, even as your soul is in health. So there's a such thing as a healthy soul, then there's such a thing as an unhealthy soul. And an unhealthy soul will affect your body in negative ways. So today we're going to be looking at the nutrition side of this. Now, I'm going to be quick to say, number one, I am not a doctor. Okay? And number two, this one book that I've done, that I'm not saying everybody go get this book. I'm saying this is one facet of processed foods. I'm not getting, this is not even the biggest factor. Sugar is the biggest factor. And I watched a documentary of some kids that were from Australia that came to the United States to do a documentary on sugar. And man, if anybody saw this, you saw that there's this one county in Tennessee that the average consumption of Mountain Dews is like 4 a day. And all their teeth are rotted to the gum. Their health is horrible. They're skinny. They're undernourished. And to find out, I don't have the facts on this, but there's probably a couple of cups of sugar in every Mountain Dew. They said if you want a round number of the sugar when you're looking at the label, and I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to stop and talk about other things as it comes to my mind. About 4 grams of sugar is a teaspoon or tablespoon, who knows? It's that much sugar. So when you see that, I just looking at a health food bar, it had 28 grams of sugar. So divide that by 4, and that's how many teaspoons of sugar. You know, I know because every now and then when my mom wasn't home, I would sneak and make the root beer Kool-Aid. And I would make sure that thing had at least 6 cups of sugar in it because root beer is just better with that much sugar. But the sugar is epidemic. It's far worse than even what I'm going to be talking about. But if you want to see how sugar wreaks the most damage in your body of anything you can put in your mouth, food-wise. And sugar just, when you read the risk of almost every bad disease, you'll see the number one food that contributes to it is sugar. So, and if you think that diet drinks are the answer, then I'm going to, we're going to reach a thing in here today. Do you know that your immune system that's in your gut, there's a lining on the inside of the intestines that lines right next to the intestine, and that is your defense wall to keep toxins from getting into your system. And there's certain things that directly affect that thin little lining, and if you affect that lining enough, it'll cause a hole in that lining. Now you have leaky gut syndrome, and that's when toxins are leaking into your bloodstream. And not only that, they now know that some of these things, as we're going to be talking about, they mimic protein and they mimic neurons, and there is a direct link between your brain and your gut, and these things can get in there and mess up all the communication. And you know, once your immune system's compromised, you're going to get something one way or another. So it's just good to know about these things. This is from a book called The Plant Paradox by Stephen Gundry, and he breaks down the item that I want to talk about today because it has so much to do with the incredible poor health of the American society. I mean, our hospitals are overrun. The hospitals don't, I mean, that our society is sick. And if you think you can go back to the 1950s when they built the food pyramid, hopefully that's going to be turned upside down today. Another good book I think I have listed at the end here Nope, that was on something else. I almost had 3 things for today. It's called The Great American Health Hoax. This is the personal journey of a PhD from MIT or somewhere like that, extremely brilliant man. He kept getting sicker and sicker, going to doctors and getting sicker and sicker until he was so sick he was down to, I think, under 100 pounds or whatever it was. And the pain was so great, he couldn't eat, couldn't keep anything down. Nothing worked. All his systems were shutting down. And with barely room to breathe, he started doing his own research. And now he has robust health. He's been great for years. And he wrote this book just giving his journey and what food had to do with his incredible sickness. And then going to doctors who kept treating the symptoms, but the stuff they were giving him for the symptoms was only making him worse. Terrible place to be, but a great story. So this book is called The Plant Paradox. This is my summary of it. Please don't show this to him. He'd be freaked out that anybody made 3 pages out of his book. What are considered healthy foods can often be bad for you. Wouldn't that be horrible that you think you're eating healthy and what you're eating is actually bad for you? I mean, it's hard enough to get people to want to eat healthy. Like last night, some of us were out and I got a small steak and I got 2 sides of broccoli. And, I was kind of proud of myself for getting broccoli, and because of what I know about real butter, I always get melted butter and dump it on my broccoli to get that good fat in there. And but I knew as I was eating it that it was not organic. And you say, well, are you going to be picky and talk about organic food? Oh, yeah. Because what we need to realize is anything that's being sold to grocery stores primarily, yes, there is organic, but anything that's being sold to chains, you want to understand that this stuff is being mass produced like you would not believe, and they never pick it right. They have a process for making it right by treating it with chemicals. So I knew, number one, that the broccoli I was eating contained the following things: insecticides, and you don't wash those off. Pesticides, you don't wash those off. I'm going to show you how in just a few minutes. And then the process that they used to get that food to that restaurant was treating it with chemicals. So though I ate a plate full of broccoli, and yes, I think there's more good benefits than eating the other stuff I could have eaten, but almost everything we eat is tainted. And what you realize that the reason, and who knows, maybe they say it's organic, and that depends on whatever organization is certifying it organic. I get all that, but your chances with organic food are much better to get healthy food and organic poultry, or organic meat, and wild-caught fish, because anything else is being farmed, and if it's being farmed, it's being farmed commercially. And what's the root word of commercial? Money. Sorry, that was a little trick, but the root word of commercial is money. So people are raising it to get the most money they can from the product and selling it to the market. So what are they using? They're using everything in their power to make it healthy and bigger. So they're getting antibiotics, they're getting hormones, they're getting things to fatten them up. It goes on and on. So what you always need to remember is whatever you're buying for meat or fish or poultry, all that, those used to be live animals. And what those animals ate is what you're going to be eating, because most of those things don't go away. So it's a question of what am I putting into my body, and is this helping my body do its job of keeping me well? Because like I said in that statement I read, we want to help our body do what it was created to do, and the body is incredibly, miraculously made to heal itself. But if you're smoking 10 packs of cigarettes a day, you are not helping your body. And you say, well, I don't smoke cigarettes. Yeah, but what about processed foods? There's probably not one of us in here that could say, I eat completely clean. Because your definition of clean may be this, that, and the other, but you may not understand some of what we're going to be looking at. So this is the deal. Problematic foods interact with our body system and cause us harm. Vegetables and fruits are not always our friends. Whole grain foods are not the healthy choice we have been told. Lectins are protein substances produced by plants that can disrupt cell functioning in humans. This malfunction results in sickness and diseases, and more commonly, gut problems. Gut problems. You know, it used to be my dad told me this, so I won't consider it too vulgar because he was not a vulgar man. He says, you know, at my age, just a good bowel movement is a good day. You know, and the reason they say that is because when the gut's not working properly, your body's not working properly. Now, scientists are saying, the medical profession, about 80% of our immune system is in the gut. Did you know that there's actually neurons, the same things that are in your brain, that are in your gut, and that they communicate about your immune system? So that's when we say that these lectins are proteins. Have you ever seen, there's certain animals that another animal knows, if I eat that animal, I'm going to get sick or die. And they just know that, so they leave them alone, you know. Well, plants have that same protection. And they're proteins called lectins. And even though the plant can look very delicious to an insect or to an animal or something like that, they know, and don't ask me how they know, but it's built in to know, I can't eat that. This other stuff I can eat, but if I eat that, it's going to hurt me or kill me. And what hurts them or kills them is lectin. It's a protein that is produced. So just keep that in mind, because that's what this talk is about today, basically, is lectins. Some plants are good for us, other plants are not. Some fruits are good for us, others are not. Some plant constituents, such as gluten, do more harm than good to the body. But despite all the fuss about gluten, there's only one kind of lectin. We need to be eating the right kind of plants and fruits and not eating other kinds of plants and fruits. So in other words, gluten is in effect a lectin, but gluten in itself is not the problem. It's an overdose of lectins. And so this is where we're going to go with this. Many plants contain chemicals that keep them from being eaten by animals. As I was just saying, this self-survival technique is by making it difficult to digest their seeds. Such plants produce, that's my spell checker not working for me, produce lectins when consumed by humans. They'll disable us and gradually hurt our system. There's two types of seeds, the one intended to be eaten and those not meant to be eaten. And it's simply saying that if you eat plants that are high in lectins, the job of the lectin is to disrupt the digestive process. That's what it's there for. It's its self-survival thing that God put in it. I'm not going to say evolution, because if that were true, all the plants would have been eaten and they wouldn't have made it this far. So God puts these lectins in there to protect the plant. But when we start eating plants that are loaded with lectins, then they start doing their work in our system. Now, you'll see this a little bit later, but we all just need to know we're not eating the same foods that our grandparents ate. Our foods are now being genetically modified, and the only thing people care about when the wheat or whatever is in the field is that they get the best gain from their investment that there is. And so you just saw where the one guy that was exposed to Roundup on a continually basis, had cancer and won a multi-million-dollar thing against Roundup. And what they proved is they knew that it would do this. Well, Roundup is one of the things that's sprayed on the foods that you eat, and it doesn't wash off. And so, this doesn't have to do with food, but the same thing just happened with Johnson & Johnson with their baby powder. Johnson & Johnson baby powder has asbestos in it, and it's caused cancer. And finally, somebody took them to court and won the case, and what they found out in research is they always knew it had asbestos in it. They always knew that there was a risk. But guess what? You don't want to affect the bottom line. And so you hide this stuff and keep it from people. And so don't think that these producers have any interest in our health at all. That would be a very wrong assumption. Seeds with the first category, the ones intended to be eaten, are usually surrounded by tough protective material that keeps the seed on a journey through the digestive tract and out through excretion. The seeds in the second category do not have a tough casing. Their goal here is to keep from being eaten, so they produce harmful chemical substances and are potent enough to debilitate those who eat it. Some of those chemicals are lectins. So lectins aren't just, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Some of those chemicals are lectins. They interfere with your cellular functioning by causing a couple of things. For instance, and they are responsible for what you probably know as leaky gut. Phytates are anti-nutrients that make it impossible for the body to soak up important minerals. Trispin inhibitors make digestion a burden. They impede the process of digestive enzymes and ultimately one's growth. Tannins protect the plant by giving it a bitter taste that is obviously not appealing. And alkaloids commonly found in the stems and leaves of nightshades such as potatoes and peppers can cause inflation. So these little lectins that are in these things, we've never, there's never been a big report put out about this, because why? There's no money in it. But everything we eat, we need to be trying as best we can to determine what is going to be the most healthy for us. Because just some of those things, anybody enjoy having an upset stomach? You know, anybody really enjoy knowing that you're eating, but you're not getting hardly any of the nutrients that you think you should be getting? And I mean, you know, there's 100 tangents we could go on here. The soil that they use to raise these things in that we eat has been depleted probably for 50 years. And so it's artificial fertilizer that makes the stuff grow. It's the insecticides and herbicides that protect them. But all these things put more poison into the things that we eat. And that's why this book shows pictures of mouths of people around the world. This dentist, cameras were brand new, and he took his wife and he went to places in the world that still didn't have access to Western food. And he went into those places, and as you've heard me say, they show a picture of the teeth. And the teeth where people are eating what they've raised and what they have right there, healthy teeth, healthy bodies. And some of these were villages that were only one mountain pass away, like in Switzerland, from the same type and group of people, but who were on Western diets, and they went in. And for the one village, it was 1 or 2 cavities in a mouth. For the other village, the mouths were just riddled. The teeth were up to the gums. They were rotten. Their mouths were poorly formed. They weren't wide. Their demeanor was smaller, and just such a link to this Western food. And that was 100 years ago. The first 3 of these are found in whole grains. The lectins. Lectins are lectin proteins produced by plants to defend themselves while harming us in the process. The spotlight's been on gluten, which is one of the many lectins in existence and at work in our bodies. When lectins are consumed, they find carbohydrates or polysaccharides to attach themselves to. As though this were not enough, lectins also assist bacteria and viruses in doing their dirty jobs, making their hosts more prone to infections. And then there is the fact that they trigger weight gain, is evident in the functioning of the WGA, or wheat germ agglutinin. Man, I remember as a kid, if you wanted to get bulk, you ate wheat germ. And I'm going, boy, that was not so cool. The actions of lectins can impair or destroy whatever consumes it. What we do is create a drug to combat the effects and just go on eating it. What makes matters worse is we feed these things to animals, then we then eat. Cows, poultry, and seafood are all fed with Lectins. Eating only organic plants and grass-fed animal products is not about being trendy, it's about choosing good health. If you think the prices of these products are high, consider the alternative. And I'm going to tell you what Joyce and I have found. Only eating 2 meals a day or sometimes 1 meal a day, our budget for healthy foods has gone up because we're not consuming as much as we were, and so the savings we have can pay for healthy food. Our bodies have a defense system for lectin, but it becomes overwhelmed when we continually consume it in large quantities. Here are 3 ways lectin they can break through the intestinal lining. And man, you're in trouble when that happens, because that's when you get toxic. They make themselves to resemble certain useful proteins in our body, and they imitate real hormones and use that to carry out miscommunication among the cells. This results in sickness and diseases as well as obesity. Isn't this amazing? The lectins, just like cancer cells, do you know that cancer cells are experts of disguise? And they transform all the time. And I don't have the numbers. I had them available to me. But typically speaking, a cancer cell can change what it looks like to our immune system at some amazing rate. But a healthy immune system can bust the disguise by like 3 times what the cancer cells have. But once your immune system becomes compromised through stuff like this and other things, then it can't properly identify the cancer cell as an enemy in the body. Did you ever wonder why? Have you ever heard of anybody that, oh, he's 90 years old, what's your secret to success? Oh, 2 packs of cigarettes a day and a pint of whiskey. That's what kept me alive all this time. You're looking at that and you see people trying to live healthy and they die of cancer. And you're going, what? There's some discrepancy. But the thing that none of us want to happen is have our body come to the place where it can't recognize an enemy inside our body. That's the job of the immune system. Well, these lectins, they can also transform themselves to appear to the body as a healthy protein or even a hormone. And once the body accepts it as a hormone, then it gets in and it begins short-circuiting the communication center to the brain and to the immune system. I mean, the verse in Psalms we read that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm telling you, God created this body to just absolutely be amazing. And so what are we doing to help our body do what it was created to do? Because the typical answer, and the book I showed you here, the Great American Health Hoax, his thing, and honestly, you know me, I've been to a doctor plenty of times. I'm not against going to a doctor, but be careful about what you're asking them to fix you of. Because his subline here, because they did this to him, was the surprising truth about how modern medicine keeps you sick. Because when you go in with leaky gut, they're going to give you a pharmaceutical drug to go down and counteract whatever's going on there. What about if we just allowed the body to heal the hole? That sounds like a good idea. But most of the times when you go to a doctor and you're complaining, well, my digestion isn't good, you're going to see, this is, some of you may not like what you're going to hear, but this is the truth of the matter. One of the things that's worse for your digestive system than anything is taking an antacid. Because now what you're dealing with is that's also going down into the intestines and creating holes in your gut. But what's the answer? We don't feel good. We go get an over-the-counter drug. And I'm going to talk about those in a little bit. The non-steroidal over-the-counter drugs for inflammation, every single one of them. Well, you know what? They always knew that it would go in and relieve pain, but now they have the science to follow it all the way through. And by the time it gets down to your large intestine, what it's doing is it's eating that lining away there in your gut, and making you sicker, where you have to take more of them, and it turns into a vicious circle. So that's just some of it. Lectins are unavoidable, so we need to choose which ones we eat and what quantity. So lectins aren't evil in themselves, but if we're overloading on them, then it can affect us adversely. Commercial agriculture, altered cow milk, New World plants, and food processing introduce our bodies to strange new lectins. Lectins could be responsible for virtually every health problem there is today. You see, when they spray a plant to keep insects from eating it, what do you think they're putting on the plant? They're putting lectins on the plant to keep the insects from eating it. When they spray herbicide to keep the weeds from growing, that's going into the plant. And so you see, now it's not just what naturally comes in the plants. Processed food is packed with lectins, because if you're eating processed meat, and by the way, did y'all see the news where, have you ever seen that pink paste that they make out of meat and say, surely you can't call that meat? Now the USDA has allowed them to call that hamburger.
That's right.
So you will be purchasing hamburger that is made out of processing all the stuff. And you know what's also in that stuff? You know it's in a processed thing. When you get processed turkey breast, it's not a turkey breast, it's turkey. You know, one of the primary things you're eating in there is paste that holds all that together. I mean, it's incredible. Processed foods. Okay. In a bid to satisfy growing needs of the human population, commercial agriculture is born, and with it, chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and genetic mutations to make plants more resistant to pests. There you go. The last practice basically requires injecting more lectins into the plants to make them more undesirable to predators. So do you see how we're eating more lectins than any of our ancestors ever did? Most commercial baked goods are now risen with transglutamase, a yeast substance that is detrimental to the body. Secondly, processed foods that include whole grains in their ingredients list usually require preservatives that are hazardous to human health. So when you see anything that's being produced in a mass way to send to all the grocery stores and all the Walmarts and all the this and all the that, what you need to understand is those things are packed with stuff to keep it from decaying. One of the mothers here in the homeschool group a couple of years ago were showing people a McDonald's hamburger and fries that were a couple of years old, and it looked good enough to eat. And I told Joyce, that's why I'm so well preserved. I ate a lot of those things. So it doesn't work that way. Okay, your gut under attack. Our body is made up of microbes, and that may sound gross, but there's more microbiotic cells that aren't human in your body than human cells. We are, it's on our skin. That's why sometimes they say the antibacterial stuff, if you do that, what you're doing is killing your body's ability to resist disease and stuff. Man comes up with so many great ideas, you know. Yeah. And we and the microbes depend upon each other for survival. We cannot do without them. They cannot do without us. The collection of these microbes are called microbiome or holobiome. There are many microbes in the holobiome which are housed in your body and constitute what you're made up of. So, as a pastor, if you go to the hospital and I'm going to come visit you. But what if because your body can heal and repair itself through different ways. So what if the role as a pastor isn't just to visit you in the hospital when you're sick, but how about if the role of the pastor is also helping you know ways that you can live healthier? So I wouldn't have to go visit you in the hospital because you wouldn't be sick. I'm telling you, this may not seem like a spiritual word today, but since we live in the real world and since sickness affects each and every one of us, I would love to have known some of this when I was having a kidney stone every few months. I mean, I was a kidney stone machine. And I did the diet thing twice on trying to figure out this, that, and the other. And, the goal here is not to have to be prayed for healing, though we'll do that in a heartbeat. But what if we could just live healthier? That's why I'm doing this. I couldn't do this whole series on health and being healthy without one like this. And remember, this is only just one. There's a bunch of other things that are involved in the stuff that kills us. They are quite important because they perform tasks in the immune, nervous, and hormonal systems and the organisms located in the GI tract to break down your food and convert it into energy and serve as a guard against toxic things you consume like lectins. Isn't this amazing? These microbes are there, and they're in our body, and from the mouth to where we excrete from, they're performing tasks in the immune system, the nervous system, and the hormonal system. Now, who in here could say, I don't care about any of that? Because even thinking like that would be crazy. This is 3 major systems of your body that these microbes are there not only to keep healthy, but to help protect you from toxins. Your intestinal wall separates the microbes in your gut from getting into your body. The intestinal wall is somewhat similar to the skin inside out, but the pressing function is to take in the food. However, it is only 1 cell thick and stops strange material from penetrating your bloodstream and tissues. The goal is to keep these microbes and food contained in your intestine. If you are in trouble if they get outside of your body. Ideally, the microbes break the food down into tiny particles in your gut, which is converted into energy or nutrients that should get into your system. Your veins and lymph system is the portal through which this is done, and it can only take little particles at a time. When big particles, big molecules somehow get into your system, your immune system starts to ring warning bells, and the immune system reacts. Why? Because it can't process a big molecule. It can only process the small ones. And so even the size, you see, if the bacteria and the micronutrients in your body, not nutrients, the ones that the microbes, if they're not doing their job and breaking your food down to the size particle that your body can take and then get nourishment out of it, then it rings the alarm system of the immune system. As your immune system tries to defend you, these electrons fuse such that your body cannot take in the nutrients it needs. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, the NSAIDs, harm the lining of the small intestine, which destroys the wall that keeps lectins and other harmful things from getting inside of you. Using NSAIDs frequently create holes in your intestinal wall and give access to foreign material. Your body starts to fight by causing pain, and then you take in more NSAIDs and you keep going in circle. This leads or can lead to leaky gut syndrome. And so just knowing this and say, then what are the alternatives? What are other things that I can use rather than these things I know? Because if that lining's going away, then these things can get into your system because they don't have to go through the process of being a small particle. They can get directly into your system through the walls of the intestines with holes in it. Autoimmune diseases are caused by penetration of your gut, intestinal wall, and gut layer and can be healed by healing your gut. You know, I don't know how many of you think like I do, but when you talk about autoimmune disease, probably 80% of us in here have one form of autoimmune disease or another, or even more. Autoimmune disease, we saw a lot of that getting healed in inner healing just simply through helping people not hate themselves. And now even scientists have followed up with this stuff that if you hate yourself and you're always down on yourself, and say one of your parents always told you, you're stupid, you'll never get it, you're stupid, you'll never get it, and somehow that turns into, I'm stupid, I'll never get it. And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the more you hate yourself, the more you weaken your immune system. It's amazing. And so we saw people get healed of autoimmune diseases by getting them to love themselves as the Lord loves them and understand that they are made in the image of God, and et cetera, et cetera. So this all has to do with autoimmune. So autoimmune, what I was going to say is that autoimmune diseases, that's where the immune system gets confused and attacks you instead of the disease or whatever the issue was. And of course, how does this happen? Well, we've already said that these lectins can pretend they're proteins and they can pretend they're hormones, and they get into your nervous system and they screw up the communication between the brain and the immune system and the gut and all this, that, and the other. So the immune system has to do something, so it attacks you in a way that can actually kill you, because when the immune system is compromised, your health is compromised. And so wouldn't it be great if you say, well, and we will pray, but it's just like you can't cast out stupid. I mean, if you're gonna do stuff to make you sick and you can ask people to pray for you all the time, at some point that prayer has to lead to wisdom that says, well, maybe if you stop smoking 6 packs of cigarettes a day, you might not be contracting lung cancer. Just saying. So, antibiotics, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, stomach acid blockers, artificial sweeteners, and endocrine disruptors, which are lectins, genetically modified foods, and exposure to blue light were things that have destroyed your gut flora, and all these things have friendly substitutes. Isn't that amazing? That's so much part of our lives. So in summary, we need to understand that what we stop eating has more effect than what you start eating. That was a good word. We need to treat our gut microbes properly, and they will take care of us in return. Stop feeding the bad bacteria what they thrive on. Yes, excommunicate sugar, refined carbs, and junk food. Surprisingly, you need to erase the idea that fruit is health food. That's some of his opinions he's got. Beans, corn. Corn is the worst. Corn, now it's not only genetically modified, but it's so full of lectins that corn is the highest on the list besides, it's considered a whole grain, I guess, but corn is horrible. And because corn, and do you know how much stuff comes from corn now in everything you eat? Just take a look at the ingredients. I was looking at a supplement that we used to take, Joyce and I used to take, and it was the light version of it, and I wanted to see if it had something in it that I was looking for, and I went down to look at it. Now this is a health drink. This is made by EAS, which is a thing for athletes and everything, and this was a shake to make to get some vitamins and protein and this, that, and the other. And I looked at and I was just looking at the ingredients to see if it had any creatine in it. And I looked down, and I wasn't looking for this, but what I saw was, and I told Joyce, the number one ingredient in this shake is corn, or a derivative of corn. And corn is something now, and any of what stuff made out of corn syrup, whatever it is, this will go to your gut and wreak havoc. All corn is injected with lectin. It's genetically modified. Most of the fast food you consume is made from corn. Genetically modified corn causes brittle bones in the chicken when they feed it to the chicken to fatten the chickens. And then you consume the chicken. You're loading yourself with that same lectin. Products from livestock are also loaded with antifloxins and other toxic byproducts from fungi, which are harmful to humans and animals and usually lead to cancer and genetic changes. So be careful with animal protein. Okay, as I said, this is just a very brief overview of one fraction of what's in processed foods, and I only do this to raise an alarm to say we can't keep eating toxins and expect to be healthy as a result of it. And next week, I'm hoping to have Dagmar get up. She's so close to 100 pounds, and she's just in a place of pressing into that 100 pounds. I've got my 250 dumbbells up the stairs and ready to put in my car because I'm going to bring them on the stage and invite anybody in the congregation to come up and pick up how much weight she's lost. Just amazing what she's done. And some people mistakenly think, well, she did it the easy way. She had the operation. Let me tell you something. No, she did it the hard way. She went to counseling for months before they'd even qualify her for that operation. And we all know people that have had the operation that are still obese. So she didn't do it the easy way. She's doing it the hard way. But I'll let her tell you about the medications that she's no longer on. Diabetes, gone. The health that comes with a healthier body. And so I'm sorry if anybody came to church to hear a spiritual word, but this is spiritual to me, because if you call me to pray for you because you've got an issue that could be coming from any of this, this is just like, hey, we have a couple of extra of these books called The Health Hoax. I mean, is everything in here, most of it's scientific, but does the guy have opinions? Of course he does. You don't have to believe everything in a book, but what if you read something that you find out you're doing and that you've got something going on and you could say, man, I could fix that. We're so, it's fearfully and wonderfully made. In other words, when you set about to start treating your body right, your body can heal and will heal to a certain degree. It's just amazing. Food in, it's what we are. So my exhortation for us all, and I'm like this, is it, I've been trying to eat pretty clean, and if I grab an Oreo or something like that, it's not going to kill me. But if I grab a box of Oreos once a week, it is going to kill me. Just the sugar content, So it's just a wake-up call to say, why don't we look at what we're eating? And if you want to know more, the internet's full of it. And by the way, it's true if it's on the internet. I mean, there are reputable people on the internet that you can look up and get this information, or get the books yourself. But especially people who have been through it and have something to say, and people who are studying the science, because just like in the Truth Project, we learned from Focus on the Family that Darwin said in writing that if at any time in the future anything that disproves my theory, then I reject my theory, the theory of evolution. I reject it wholeheartedly. Well, they didn't even have microscopes, and now they follow stuff. I don't know how they do it. It's almost like watching the BBC where they follow these animals around and get in their dens, and now they can follow stuff all through the body, know it's exactly what's happening. And so what I say is, if you want to be educated, then you can be accountable. And if you want to be responsible, you can be educated. But just to blow it off as, no, I eat good enough, I would say is really insanity. So let's take a close look at what we can do to help our bodies perform the way God created them to be. And let's be striving for health. And then if we can't make it, we will pray for healing. But wouldn't it be great if we just made that push to be more healthy and just see what God could do in the bodies that He created? Let's pray. Father, I thank you that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and I thank you that food is an everyday part of our lives. And not to discuss this would be like not discussing other things that we face every day but pose a danger to us. So Lord, I pray that as we're talking today, that you could just enlighten us with enough desire to do our own research, to find out, to look into it, and then to apply what we learn to our diet and our nutrition, just as we would any other thing in our body. And I thank you and praise you for this in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Amen.